Hey everyone, Sarah here. Rewind Justice brings you revenge stories that will blow your mind. If you're ready, hit subscribe and let's go.
The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Just Judge Morrison, the court reporter, my sister Victoria and her attorney, my attorney Rebecca, and me. No audience. No drama. Just four walls and the truth about to come out. Victoria sat across the aisle looking perfect as always. Designer suit, hair professionally styled, makeup flawless. She dressed for victory. Her attorney, Martin Brooks, had that confident smirk that expensive lawyers wear when they think they've already won. I wore a simple navy dress and the pearl earrings Grandma had given me for my 30th birthday. The last birthday we'd celebrated together. Let me explain how I ended up here, being sued by my own sister for half of the trust fund our grandmother left me. Victoria and I are only 2 years apart. She's 34, I'm 32, but we might as well have grown up in different families. Victoria was the shining star. Cheerleader in high school, sorority president in college, married a successful orthodontist, had 2 photogenic children, lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs. Her Instagram feed looked like a lifestyle magazine. She was everything our parents had hoped for in a daughter. I was different. I'd gone to state school instead of the private university Victoria attended. I'd majored in social work instead of business. I'd chosen to work at a nonprofit helping at-risk youth instead of climbing a corporate ladder. I made $52,000 a year. I lived in a small apartment. I drove a 10-year-old Honda. Our parents loved us both, I think, but they certainly celebrated Victoria more visibly. Every family gathering included updates on her latest achievements, her kids' accomplishments, her husband's growing practice. When people asked about me, Mom would say, "Oh, Emma's doing her charity work. She's very passionate about helping people." The tone always implied, "It's nice but not quite as impressive as Victoria." I didn't mind much. I'd made peace with being the less glamorous sister. But Grandma Rose saw things differently. Grandma Rose was my maternal grandmother. She'd been a schoolteacher for 40 years, had lived modestly, saved carefully, and invested wisely. By the time she retired, she had a portfolio worth just over $900,000. Shocking for a woman who'd never made more than $60,000 a year in salary. Compound interest and patience, she'd tell me. 2 things most people undervalue. When Grandma's health started declining in 2018, she moved into an assisted living facility called Meadowbrook. It was nice but not fancy, exactly her style. She had a 1-bedroom apartment with a small kitchen, a reading nook by the window, and walls covered in family photos. I started visiting every Tuesday evening after work. Sometimes I'd bring dinner, her favorite Thai takeout from the place near my apartment. Sometimes we'd just sit and talk. She'd tell me stories about teaching, about Grandpa before he died, about raising my mom. "You remind me of your grandfather," she said one evening. Quiet, thoughtful. More interested in doing good than looking good. "Victoria does good too, Grandma. She volunteers at the kids' school, Victoria performs goodness," Grandma interrupted gently. "You live it. There's a difference." I didn't know what to say to that. Victoria visited too, but less frequently. Maybe once a month, usually on Sundays, usually with the whole family in tow. The kids would run around while Victoria's husband Derek scrolled on his phone. Victoria would stay for about 45 minutes, update Grandma on their lives, take a few photos, then leave. "Busy woman," Grandma would say after they left. There was something in her tone I couldn't quite identify. In December 2019, Grandma had a small stroke. Nothing catastrophic, but it was a warning. The doctors said she'd recovered well but needed to be more careful about stress and exertion. I started coming 3 times a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays after work. Sunday mornings before she went to the facility's church service. We'd play Scrabble. Watch Jeopardy! Sometimes just sit in comfortable silence while she did crossword puzzles and I answered emails. Victoria visited the week after the stroke, then not again until Christmas. In February 2020, right before the world shut down, Grandma asked me to stay after dinner. "I need to tell you something, sweetheart," she said, her voice serious. "I've updated my estate planning." "Grandma, you don't need to discuss this with me. I want to. I'm leaving the bulk of my estate to you. The investment portfolio, the savings, everything. It's about $920,000 currently." I froze. "Grandma, no. That should be split between Victoria and me. Mom would want. Your mother will understand." And if she doesn't, that's not your problem. Grandma took my hand. Emma, you're the one who shows up. You're the one who calls just to chat. You're the one who remembers my stories and asks follow-up questions the next week. Victoria is lovely, but she's busy with her life. That's fine. That's normal. But I want my money to go to someone who actually knows me. But, listen. I've set up the estate so it's airtight. You'll be the sole beneficiary of the trust. Victoria will receive some personal items, jewelry, my china set, things like that. Your mother will get my car and a few other things. But the money goes to you. This is going to cause problems, Grandma. Then let it cause problems. I've earned the right to distribute my assets however I choose. And I choose you. She pulled an envelope from her desk drawer. It was sealed with wax, theatrical, very Grandma. I've written a letter explaining my reasoning. My attorney has instructions to give this to the judge if there's ever any legal challenge to my estate plan. I wanted you to know it exists. A letter. Explaining exactly why I made this choice. With specific examples. Dates. Details. She smiled. I taught for 40 years, Emma. I know how to document my reasoning. I didn't think much about the letter at the time. I was more concerned about Grandma's health and the growing news about a virus from China. Then March 2020 hit. Lockdown. Meadowbrook went into strict isolation. No visitors allowed. I couldn't see Grandma in person for 3 months. We talked on the phone every single day. Sometimes twice a day. I'd call in the morning before work, then again in the evening. We'd video chat on Sundays. I sent her books, puzzles, her favorite chocolates. When the facility finally allowed outdoor visits in June, I was there every week, sitting 6 feet apart in the garden. Victoria called Grandma maybe once every 2 weeks during lockdown. She was overwhelmed with homeschooling the kids. I understood. Victoria had a lot on her plate. But Grandma noticed. Nobody's too busy to make a 5-minute phone call, she said once, more sad than angry. Grandma's health deteriorated rapidly in late 2020. Another stroke in October, more severe this time. Then pneumonia in December. By January 2021 she was in hospice care. I took 2 weeks off work to be with her. I slept in the chair next to her bed. I held her hand. I read to her from her favorite books. I played her favorite music. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, old standards she'd danced to with Grandpa. Victoria visited 3 times during those final 2 weeks. Each visit lasted about an hour. She'd check her phone frequently, clearly uncomfortable with the reality of death. Grandma died on January 23, 2021, at 4:47 in the morning. I was holding her hand, singing "The Way You Look Tonight," quietly because she'd always loved that song. Victoria arrived at the facility at 9:30 a.m. after I'd called her. She cried. I think the grief was real. But there was also something else in her expression that I couldn't quite identify. Relief maybe. That it was over. That she didn't have to feel guilty about not visiting anymore. The will reading happened 2 weeks later, in the office of Grandma's attorney, Patricia Chen. Patricia was a sharp woman in her 60s who'd known Grandma for 20 years. He got right to the point. Rose's estate is relatively straightforward. The total value is approximately $912,000, consisting primarily of investment accounts and savings. There are also some personal items distributed to family members. She looked at Victoria. Victoria, you'll receive your grandmother's jewelry collection, her china set, several pieces of furniture, and her collection of first edition books. Estimated total value, approximately $15,000. Victoria nodded, smiling. He probably assumed the money was coming next. Emma, you are the sole beneficiary of the Hayes Family Trust, which contains the remainder of the estate. Approximately $897,000 after estate expenses and the personal items. Silence. Victoria's smile froze. I'm sorry, what? Your grandmother established a trust with Emma as the sole beneficiary. That can't be right. Grandma would have split it between us. Patricia's expression didn't change. I assure you this was your grandmother's clear intent. The trust was established 3 years ago and reaffirmed as recently as last December. Victoria turned to me, her face flushing. Did you know about this? Grandma mentioned she'd updated her estate planning, but you manipulated her. You spent all that time with her to get her money. Victoria, that's not. This is bullshit. She stood abruptly. I'm contesting this. No way. Grandma meant to cut me out completely. Patricia remained calm. You're welcome to contest, though I should warn you the trust is structured to be legally airtight. Mrs. Hayes was very thorough. We'll see about that. Victoria stormed out. Her husband Derek followed, giving me an apologetic look. I sat there feeling numb. This was exactly what Grandma had predicted. Patricia slid a business card across the table. You'll probably need a good attorney. I recommend Rebecca Winters. She specializes in trust and estate litigation. You think Victoria will actually sue? I'd bet my license on it. He was right. Victoria filed the lawsuit 6 weeks later, in March 2021. The legal claim was undue influence and diminished capacity. Basically, she was arguing that I'd manipulated Grandma when she wasn't thinking clearly. The demand was simple: split the trust equally. $450,000 each. I hired Rebecca Winters, who was exactly as sharp as Patricia had promised. They have a weak case, Rebecca said after reviewing the file. Your grandmother was evaluated by 2 different doctors in 2020 and found to be completely competent. The trust was established years before her health declined. And there's a pattern of decision-making that shows clear intent. But Victoria's lawyer seems confident. Victoria's lawyer is Martin Brooks. He's good at making noise. But unless they can prove actual manipulation or incapacity, they won't win. There's something else, I said. Grandma mentioned she wrote a letter, explaining her reasoning. She said her attorney had instructions to submit it if there was a legal challenge. Rebecca's eyes lit up. Did Patricia Chin mention this? Not yet. Let me call her. 20 minutes later, Rebecca had the answer. Yes, the letter existed. It was sealed with specific instructions, only to be opened and read by a judge if the estate plan was legally challenged. This letter could end the case before it really begins, Rebecca said. But we can't open it ourselves. It has to be submitted to the judge, and the judge decides whether to read it in open court. What if it doesn't say what we think it says? Your grandmother was a schoolteacher who documented everything. I'm betting it says exactly what we need. Over the next 6 months, both sides prepared their cases. Victoria's strategy became clear through discovery. Paint me as the manipulative sister who'd isolated Grandma and turned her against the family. They gathered testimony from relatives who'd seen me at Meadowbrook frequently, trying to spin it as suspicious rather than caring. They found a doctor who was willing to say, based only on medical records, never having met Grandma, that her strokes could have affected her judgment. They collected photos from Victoria's phone showing her visits to Grandma, carefully curated to suggest she'd been more present than she actually was. My strategy was simpler. Tell the truth. Rebecca gathered the visitor logs from Meadowbrook. Every single visit was documented. Date, time, duration. The pattern was undeniable. My visits, 312 visits over 3 years. Average duration, 2.3 hours. Victoria's visits, 47 visits over 3 years. Average duration, 52 minutes. Rebecca got phone records showing I'd called Grandma 847 times over 3 years. Victoria had called 93 times. We had greeting cards. I'd sent Grandma a card every week, just funny postcards or thinking of you notes. 156 cards total, all saved in a box in Grandma's apartment. We had testimony from the Meadowbrook staff. Nurse Rodriguez. Emma knew Rose's medication schedule better than some of our staff. She was here all the time. Activities Director Kim. Rose's face would light up when Emma arrived. She'd talk about her for days. And we had the medical evaluations showing Grandma's complete mental competency when she'd established and reaffirmed the trust. But the nuclear option, the letter, remained sealed, waiting. The trial was set for October 15, 2021. Small courtroom. Judge Morrison presiding. A no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a reputation for cutting through bullshit. Martin Brooks, Victoria's attorney, went first. He was theatrical. Your Honor, this case is about a grandmother's true intentions being corrupted by manipulation. Victoria Hayes loved her grandmother deeply. She visited regularly, called frequently, maintained a close relationship. But her sister Emma saw an opportunity. She increased her visits as Rose's health declined, isolated her from other family members, and convinced her to disinherit Victoria entirely. He called Victoria to testify first. She was perfect on the stand. Tears at the right moments. Voice breaking when she talked about Grandma. She described their close relationship and how shocked she'd been to learn about the trust. Did your grandmother ever indicate she loved you less than your sister? Brooks asked. Never. She always said she loved us equally. She'd tell both of us we were special to her. So why do you think she left everything to Emma? I think Emma manipulated her. Grandma had several strokes. She wasn't thinking clearly. Emma was there constantly in her ear, probably saying things about me. Objection, Rebecca said calmly. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. But the seed was planted. Victoria continued painting herself as the loving, wronged granddaughter for another 20 minutes. Brooks then called his medical expert, Dr. Raymond Chin, who'd reviewed Grandma's records. In your professional opinion, could the strokes have affected Mrs. Hayes's judgment? Potentially, yes. Strokes can affect decision-making capacity, emotional regulation, and susceptibility to influence. Could someone have taken advantage of this diminished capacity? It's possible. Rebecca destroyed him on cross-examination. Dr. Chin, did you ever meet Rose Hayes? No. Did you conduct any cognitive evaluation of her? No, I only reviewed records. Are you aware that she was evaluated by 2 separate neurologists in 2020, both of whom found her completely competent? I saw those evaluations, yes. Did you find any specific medical evidence that her strokes affected her financial decision-making capacity? He hesitated. Not specifically, no. So your testimony is based on what strokes could do, not what they actually did to Rose Hayes? I suppose that's accurate. Brooks wrapped up his case by calling 2 relatives who testified they'd never heard Rose say anything negative about Victoria. Of course they hadn't. Grandma was too classy to badmouth anyone. Then it was our turn. Rebecca started with the visitor logs. She displayed them on a screen for the judge to see clearly. Your Honor, these are official Meadowbrook facility records. 3 years of documented visits. Emma, 312 visits. Victoria, 47 visits. Judge Morrison studied the logs carefully. That's quite a disparity. It is, Your Honor. And it gets more striking when you look at the timing. Rebecca showed a timeline. During Grandma's final 6 months, when she was dying, I'd visited 73 times. Victoria had visited 5 times. We called Nurse Rodriguez, who testified about my constant presence. Emma knew Rose better than anyone. She knew her favorite foods, her medication reactions, her daily routines. She was there for the hard stuff. The bad days, the pain, the fear. She didn't just visit when it was convenient. We called Activities Director Kim. Rose talked about Emma constantly. She'd show me the postcards Emma sent. She'd tell stories about their conversations. With Victoria, she'd say things like, Victoria has such a busy life, or Victoria's children are growing so fast. Factual statements but not the same emotional warmth. Rebecca presented the phone records, the greeting cards, the pattern of care that went far beyond occasional family visits. Then she called me to the stand. Emma, why did you visit your grandmother so frequently? Because I loved her. Because she was interesting and funny and wise. Because I enjoyed her company. Did you visit more frequently as her health declined? Yes. Why? Because she was dying and I didn't want her to die alone or scared. I wanted her to know someone loved her enough to be there. Did you ever ask your grandmother to leave you money? Never. Did you ever discuss her estate planning with her before she told you about the trust? No. She brought it up herself. How did you feel when she told you she was leaving everything to you? Uncomfortable. I told her she should split it with Victoria. I was worried about exactly this, causing family problems. What did she say? She said it was her money and her choice. That she'd earned the right to distribute it however she wanted. Victoria's attorney cross-examined me, trying to find cracks. You spent a lot of time with your grandmother in her final years, didn't you? Yes. More time than any other family member? Yes. Almost like you were trying to monopolize her attention? No. I was just being her granddaughter. Isn't it true that you discussed money with her frequently? We discussed her investments sometimes. She liked to explain her financial philosophy to me. So you did talk about money. We talked about a lot of things. Cooking, books, politics. Her teaching career. Money was maybe 5% of our conversations. He couldn't shake my testimony because it was simply the truth. Rebecca stood for her closing argument. But before she began, she held up a sealed envelope. Your Honor, I'd like to submit a piece of evidence that Rose Hayes specifically prepared for this situation. It's a sealed letter held by her attorney Patricia Chin with instructions to present it to the court only if her estate plan was legally challenged. Judge Morrison looked intrigued. A letter explaining her reasoning? Yes, Your Honor. Written by Mrs. Hayes herself, witnessed and notarized, specifically addressing why she structured her estate as she did. Brooks jumped up. Your Honor, we object. This is hearsay. We haven't had a chance to review it. It's not hearsay, Rebecca countered. It's a contemporaneous statement of intent regarding her own estate planning. Completely admissible. Judge Morrison considered. I'll allow it. Let me see the letter. Rebecca handed over the envelope. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Morrison carefully opened it. Inside were 3 handwritten pages in Grandma's distinctive neat script. The judge began reading silently, her expression neutral. Then something shifted. Her eyebrows rose slightly. She glanced at Victoria, then back at the letter. I'm going to read portions of this aloud, Judge Morrison said. This is dated December 8, 2020, approximately 6 weeks before Mrs. Hayes's death. She began reading. To whom it may concern. I am writing this letter to explain my estate planning decisions in case there is ever a question about my mental state or reasoning. Let me be absolutely clear. I am of sound mind. I have been evaluated by medical professionals who confirm this, and my decisions are intentional and final. I have chosen to leave the bulk of my estate to my granddaughter Emma for very specific reasons. This is not because I don't love Victoria. I do love both my granddaughters. But love and financial legacy are not the same thing. Emma has visited me 287 times in the past 3 years. I keep a journal and I've counted. Victoria has visited 43 times. Emma calls me almost daily. Victoria calls every few weeks. More importantly, here are some specific examples of why I've made this choice. Judge Morrison paused, then continued reading. When I had my first stroke in December 2019, Emma came to the hospital within 30 minutes and stayed for 6 hours. Victoria came the next day for 45 minutes. During the COVID-19 lockdown, when Meadowbrook prohibited visitors, Emma called me every single morning and evening for 3 months. She sent me puzzles, books, and care packages weekly. Victoria called me perhaps twice a month and sent 1 package. On my 86th birthday, Emma organized a surprise video call with my former teaching colleagues. She must have tracked down 15 people from my past. Victoria sent flowers and a card. When I had pneumonia in December 2020 and thought I might die, Emma took 2 weeks off work to be with me. She slept in the chair next to my bed. She read to me, played music for me, and held my hand through the worst of it. Victoria visited 3 times, each visit lasting about an hour. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I could see Victoria's face turning red. Judge Morrison continued. I want to be clear. I don't fault Victoria for having a busy life. She has a husband, children, and many responsibilities. It's natural that she has less time for an elderly grandmother. But Emma made time. Emma made me a priority even though she also works full-time and has her own life. Emma knows my medication schedule, my favorite foods, my stories about teaching, my memories of her grandfather. Emma knows me. Victoria knows of me. There is a difference between being loved as a grandmother and being known as a person. Emma knows me as a person. I am leaving my money to Emma because she has already given me something far more valuable. Her time, her attention, and her genuine care. This is not a reward. This is simply acknowledging that if I'm going to trust someone with the financial legacy I've built over 40 years of careful saving and investing, I want it to be someone who demonstrated they understand the value of things that can't be bought. If Victoria contests this decision, she should ask herself, how many of my stories does she remember? What was my favorite book? What song did I dance to at my wedding? What was the name of the first school where I taught? Emma can answer all of these questions. I doubt Victoria can. This is my money. This is my choice. And I am entirely at peace with it. Rose Eleanor Hayes. December 8, 2020 Inch. Judge Morrison set down the letter. She looked at Victoria, whose face had gone from red to pale. Miss Victoria Hayes, can you answer those questions? What was your grandmother's favorite book? Victoria opened her mouth. Nothing came out. What song did she dance to at her wedding? Silence. What was the name of the first school where she taught? Victoria looked at her attorney desperately. Brooks stood. Your Honor, I don't think. Sit down, Mr. Brooks. The judge's voice was steel. I'm asking a simple question. If your client was so close to her grandmother, she should be able to answer basic questions about her life. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know. Judge Morrison turned to me. Ms. Emma Hayes, can you answer those questions? Her favorite book was To Kill a Mockingbird. She taught it for 37 years and said it was the most important book she ever introduced to students. The song at her wedding was The Way You Look Tonight by Frank Sinatra. And the first school where she taught was Jefferson Elementary in Portland, Oregon. She taught second grade there from 1962 to 1967. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Those details are confirmed in the biographical information submitted with the estate documents. She looked at Victoria again. Ms. Hayes, I'm going to ask you something directly and I want an honest answer. In your heart, do you believe your grandmother was wrong in her assessment? That you were as present and attentive as your sister? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time, not strategic ones. No. I wasn't. I was busy. I thought there would be more time. I thought. Her voice broke. I thought she knew I loved her even if I wasn't there much. I'm sure she did know you loved her, Judge Morrison said, her voice gentler. But this case isn't about love. It's about how a woman chose to distribute assets she earned over a lifetime. And she chose to give them to the person who gave her time and attention when time was running out. Judge Morrison didn't even take a recess. She ruled from the bench immediately. I find the trust document to be legally valid and reflective of Rose Hayes's clear, competent, and well-reasoned intentions. The letter submitted today provides detailed, specific, and compelling evidence that Mrs. Hayes knew exactly what she was doing and why. There is no evidence of undue influence. Spending time with someone you love is not manipulation. Being present during someone's final years is not exploitation. Emma Hayes was a devoted granddaughter who gave her time freely. That Rose Hayes chose to acknowledge that devotion financially was her absolute right. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Victoria Hayes will pay Emma Hayes's legal fees in the amount of $43,000. Furthermore, I'm ordering that the trust be distributed immediately without further delay. Ms. Victoria Hayes, I'm going to say something off the record that I hope you'll consider. Your grandmother left you jewelry, books, and china worth $15,000. Those items carry memories. Spend some time with them. Learn the stories behind them. It might teach you something about what your grandmother actually valued. The gavel came down. Victoria left the courtroom without looking at me. Brooks followed, already typing on his phone, probably lining up his next case. Rebecca and I stood outside the courthouse in the October sunshine. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Rebecca said. She really was. That letter was the most thorough and damning piece of evidence I've ever seen in an estate case. She knew exactly what would happen. She was a teacher for 40 years. She knew how to make her point clearly. I went home to my small apartment and sat on the couch, holding the copy of Grandma's letter that the judge had provided. Victoria texted me 2 days later. I'm sorry. You deserved it. Grandma was right about everything. I didn't respond. What was there to say? I used $100,000 of the trust to pay off my student loans and buy a modest condo. Nothing fancy. Just a 2-bedroom place with good light and a reading nook that reminded me of Grandma's apartment. I invested the rest conservatively the way Grandma had taught me. Compound interest and patience. I established a scholarship fund at the elementary school where Grandma had taught the longest. $25,000 a year for students pursuing education degrees. The Rose Eleanor Hayes Teaching Scholarship. I kept Grandma's journal, the one where she'd counted every visit, every phone call, every card. Reading through it was painful and beautiful. She documented everything not because she was building a legal case, but because she was a teacher who understood the importance of evidence. On what would have been her 89th birthday, I visited her grave. Someone had already left flowers. Fresh ones. I found out later it was Victoria. She'd started visiting the grave every month. Better late than never, I suppose. My mom called me on the anniversary of Grandma's death. Your grandmother's letter was hard to read, she admitted. But she wasn't wrong. We all got busy. We all assumed there would be more time. I miss her, I said. I know you do, sweetheart. And she knew how much you loved her. That's what mattered. I still have the letter framed in my bedroom. Not as a trophy but as a reminder. Grandma's handwriting, her clear thoughts, her final lesson to all of us. Time is the only currency that matters. How you spend it reveals who you are. I spent my time with her. She spent her legacy on me. And somewhere I think she's smiling about how perfectly that worked out.